everyone, and welcome to this brand new spoiler review for Season 1, Episode 6, the finale here, the high-handed enemy from Dune Prophecy on Geek Bites, brought to you by the
Geek Buddies! Hey!
Well, we're back at it to dive into this finale here, Shannon, of the first season. Of course, we didn't do a review last week, but we got a lot jumping into this finale here. An hour and almost 15-minute finale. Pretty insane way to end this season. And, this is a season that was a little bit cut short because of the strike. So only 6 episodes for this first season of Dune Prophecy. But certainly by the end, it seems to be teasing that there may be more seasons coming here if the numbers are there and they want to continue in this franchise. This is a spoiler review, so we'll be spoiling things that went on in the finale. So, Shannon, your overall thoughts on this episode here as we saw what happens with Tula and Valya and their relationship, Desmond Hart's role in all of this, the reuniting of Tula and Desmond, and then, of course, what we got with Ynez taking off here to Arakkis with Valya and creating this whole new world with an Atreides in tow, and what went on with Mother Dorotea taking control of Lila and essentially revealing all the stuff that Valya was doing. So essentially all the stuff that had been buried now popped up in many ways here throughout this episode. So what did you think of this episode?
I mean, I thought it was a strong finale. I mean, you can see there's a few hanging threads left over, and how much of this is just going to be going into next season, and how much of it did they maybe not get to cover?
Yeah.
Because I mean that is very much a finale. So I'm always curious when things are impacted by strikes, how that does affect the final outcome. Like in most cases, I can't see there being more episodes just because there's so much that has to take place.
Yeah.
But across the board, I thought it was very satisfying. I mean, Mother Dorotea coming back in the body of Lila. I mean, that was something like I think it was at the end of episode 2 where Lila went to that sort of, afterlife realm, and seeing the fact that Dorotea still existed, out there in the ether. I mean, it was fantastic. Poor Emperor Javicco, just the rug getting pulled out from under him from every direction.
Yeah.
And again, for those of you who are fans of the books, I mean, knowing now who Desmond is, like, do they cover that in the books? Does Tula have a stillborn child, or was this something that was created for the show? I mean, across the board, the moment at the end of episode 5, which I know we didn't get to cover, but at the end of episode 5, them saying he's an Atreides and a Harkonnen, I'm like, that might be Tula's kid. But across the board, I was really satisfied with it. And at some point, because I did read that it was picked up for a second season.
Yes.
At some point, perhaps I will go back and give Dune Part 1 another try, and maybe things will land a little differently.
I have to say, I liked the finale, but I could tell that they needed more episodes to flesh out the impact of some of the reveals and some of the twists and turns, because some of the stuff felt a little bit convenient. Like, let's bring on Theodosia, and guess what? She's a shapeshifter and can do these things, and it'll come in handy because she'll play Ynez. And so you have little moments like this that just felt like they felt like plot conveniences rather than organic, interesting plot points that could have been built to in a much more stronger way. But the performances here, I think across the board, except for maybe a couple of the younger actors, I thought was really good. Seeing Tula and Valya confront their relationship and having to come to terms with letting go of the past, because that's what was driving her forward. I mean, she's a pretty villainous person, Shannon. So this is a lot of an ask for a viewer to be like, well, what side am I on this? Because Javicco and Mark Strong was pretty much used and then gets confronted with the usage in such a dismissive and arrogant manner that it's hard to have sympathy for her when she's being dragged away or having to overcome the fear of the loss of her brother, which has been painting everything that she's doing. Maybe this is a different Valya after that experience, after writing out the fear. I don't know. Tula, clearly someone who has the ability to be just as vicious as Valya, but puts a lid on it until she has to use it against Valya to protect her son. So why did she hide this from Valya? What is the overall goal of this? and we don't find at the end who was involved in all of this. So there's questions. But I did like Natalia coming to the forefront. But again, I wish we'd had more episodes to really build up Jodie May and what she was doing and her relationship with her children, because we essentially sent Francesca's child off of the screen for the finale. And that's such an odd decision for a character that we were slowly becoming more aware of and connected to. And the Ynez stuff with the Atreides, again, I wish there had been more of that, because it seems like what Natalia said to her, you poor lovesick child, you have no idea what's going on here. So I just would have liked to have a little more time with those relationships, so that then when these moments happen, they really carried much more weight than I was hoping for. But I know, putting back on the big picture, though, I thought the special effects, the designs of everything were incredible, and the storylines, I like the way they worked, especially back on Wallach 9, with what's going on with the sisters and them discovering the truth. So now you have Dorotea coming back to essentially restart this civil war with her and Valya. So that's going to be interesting going forward for sure. Yeah, anything you want to say on that?
I mean, like Game of Thrones, I mean, a lot of these characters, it's not black and white. It's
Yeah,
very
yeah,
it's shades of gray. And I mean, truth be told, I mean, towards the end, after that confrontation between Desmond and Valya,
yeah,
when Tula showed up and actually used the voice, I'm like, oh, does Valya not make it out of this? I mean, is this sort of
yeah,
Tula's ascendance to that mother superior role? Does Tula
yeah,
kind of take over the fight against Dorotea? But then watching now how Valya did survive, I mean, the whole idea of this civil war within the sisterhood, having Valya and Dorotea round two, with Dorotea in a much younger body.
yeah.
um, and again, like not knowing all of the kind of ins and outs of Lila's state of being,
Right.
how Mother Raquella had taken over at one point. I think, unless that was Dorotea, just kind of
Yeah.
doing her best Raquella impersonation. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree in that. I do think them kind of sending Constantine off. I don't know what role he really would have played, sort of
Mm,
in the finale here.
yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see. I mean, is Jodie May, is she now the Empress? I mean, again, the line
Right.
of succession. I know it's not Constantine. I know some of you informed me in the comments that
Yeah.
Constantine, before we met Francesca, Constantine is a bastard. Like he was never going to be on the
Right.
throne. It was always going to be Ynez.
Right.
And I think Ynez is kind of the only character who seems. Maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe I'm
Mm.
remembering everything. But like, I think Ynez is kind of our hero in this
Yes, I guess.
world of
Yeah.
no one's outright good, but there are some folks who are outright bad, but they're
Yeah.
bad for what they think are the right reasons. I'm not sure. But again, I mean, them getting a little more kind of story real estate with the second season,
Yeah.
especially trying to find out who is kind of pulling the strings behind Desmond,
Yeah.
that's going to be super fascinating.
Yeah, what did you think of this relationship here? Let's talk about it. What did you think of Valya's journey here? And Shannon, we went back and forth, right? We found out more with Valya and what she was doing, how she had essentially sent Dorotea's followers, I think they call the butlerists, like essentially to their own deaths by suicide, lied to the rest of the ladies there that were part of the sisterhood, except for who came in later, rather, to be part of the sisterhood. But sister, was it Avila, who stays and essentially pledges fealty just to stay alive, and then later when Dorotea reveals anything, Avila doesn't go like, I'm sorry, I betrayed you. Here, break it, tell them more truth. Just don't do anything to me. So did you like the back and forth that we got in the fleshing out of Valya's intentions and her journey that she went on in this finale, manipulating the situation, embarrassing Javicco, and then later releasing Ynez and that Atreides guy out of that, Keiran, I think his name is, out of that situation, and then later the confrontation with her and Tula. What did you think of how this was all kind of resolved by the end of her storyline throughout this episode?
Valya's a fascinating character.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that comes down to the performance of Emily Watson,
Yeah.
just that stoicism that she has, except with Desmond. I mean, seeing someone that can sort of outmaneuver her and sort
Yeah.
of supplant her the voice, like her powers. because Emily Watson is such a compelling character, like to me, she's never an outright villain. Because I really like to watch her. Like when I think of like classic villains, again, making that Game of Thrones comparison,
Yeah.
when I think of like Cersei Lannister, and I'm like, she's not Cersei. Like, I don't think she's vindictive. I think she's very much thinks I am in the right, and this is what has to happen. And that is what makes that's what makes I won't even say a villain. I mean, that's what makes an antagonist interesting, is believing in your point of view, believing in your cause. I mean, that's why Magneto is such a fascinating character. And we got this with X-Men 97, because a lot of times, like, well, Magneto's a bad guy. You start to understand Magneto's point of view, and then you start to agree with him. I don't know if I'm quite to that point with Valya. But I do understand where her character is coming from. Her outright belief in what she's doing is like, this is what has to happen. We are the only thing that's going to be able to save this. I don't trust this in anyone else, with anyone else. So I was super satisfied. I mean, poor Javicco, poor Mark Strong.
You got to ask yourself why he takes a role like this, don't you? As an actor, you're like, he never got a chance to kind of stand on his own, and was essentially kind of castrated or emasculated throughout this series.
See, I think that's exactly why he took it, because he doesn't play these parts. He doesn't play the cuck. He doesn't play the beta. Like, he is very much an alpha, or he's a bad guy.
Right.
And so getting to play this guy who's constantly under the thumb of someone or something, I think that makes for a very interesting journey as an actor. Because again, he's never, to my knowledge, at least in my knowledge of his catalog, he's never really played this guy. And I think he brings, because he does have that hard Mark Strong exterior.
Yeah.
But when you see how he is constantly being used and constantly being sidestepped, to me, it was fascinating. I mean, I was kind of with you at the beginning, like, he's such an unusual choice for this role. You would normally pick someone who is a little more diminutive.
Yeah.
But having someone who does strike that, strong profile, like someone that looks like they should be a great ruler, and then you see how ineffective he actually is. I think he probably had a blast with this, because again, it's something different.
Yeah. Well, let's keep connected a little bit to the Valya situation. What did you think of how this went down with Lila, and what she discovered here, and what she revealed? And she kind of turns on Jen a little bit by tricking her to let her get injected, but then we open the door to her realizing how a lot of her sisters were killed, and how her influence on the Bene Gesserit was essentially removed by Valya, and her wanting to bring people back into this way of thinking about the sisterhood, and where she wants to go, and the members of the sisterhood that were rallied around her, and where she wants to take everybody. What did you think of how they laid that out here in this particular finale? And by the end, do you sense that she will become, with Emmeline and with Jen leading the way with her, and of course Avila, who just goes wherever, who's ever got the power, will they become formidable foes here by the end? Does it feel that way? And do you think she stays in Lila's body, or is this going to be a battle between Dorotea and her mother Raquel for control of Lila?
So Chloe Leia, who played the actor, the performer, what a great season of TV she had, getting to play three different people. My guess is that Dorotea doesn't have any place else to go. Like, that Lila is kind of the only vessel that she can connect to. So knowing that it probably is going to be a reckoning between her and Valya is great. I mean, and getting to see the scene from her, that flashback from her point of view, how there were other sisters there. I mean, this is another character who believes absolutely in what they are doing. And again, those two sort of ideological differences butting heads, especially she's getting another chance. Like, she saw just how dirty Valya will play. That has sort of reset the board in what this confrontation could be, not just between the two of them, but that struggle of who is going to lead the sisterhood. Chloe Leia did just such a fantastic job here. And that moment where she says loosen the binds to Jen, it's like, oh, she's dead. Like you are 100% dead right now. Yeah, I'm really curious to see where that story goes.
Me too. I thought Chloe did a great job, and I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of some of the young. Like I thought Princess Ynez. I don't think she's the strongest actress for that role, but I do think Chloe Leia nailed this Lila role so well. I mean, like you said, three different characters that she's playing as an actress that were so well realized when she was playing those characters, and doesn't play the possessed type of standard thing. She plays it much more intriguing and interesting. And the adjustment of the speech patterns, all of that, and the physicalities of it all, the way she's able to command the acolytes when they think she's just regular Sister Lila, when they realize who she is and like jump to her command, I think is great as well. And the reveals, the progression of the reveals here, she doesn't force people to learn this stuff. She's saying, I'm going to show you, I'm going to show. And there's already suspicion amongst the sisters there with Jen and Emelina leading the way, going like, what is going on here? So the fact that they explored all of that, I thought was great with with Lila and where it's going to lead to. And she seems pretty formidable by the end here. And now what do these sisters do with this new information and the bodies that are there and the knowledge that they have about Valya? Does this undercut Valya when we go into a second season? How much of it is going to undercut her? And I hope with a season without the strike, we're going to see these really insane knockdown, drag out battles, both either physically or verbally or with their powers and their voices. Is Dorotea different now, coming back, having experienced this and having gone through this with Valya, and us seeing young Kasha, young Francesca, and young Tula essentially doing her bidding throughout this whole situation? I'm going to be real curious to see how Dorotea turns that around, especially with Tula, who has a little bit of a wavering allegiance to Valya from the beginning, as family sometimes does, because no one knows you like family. And I think Tula is the one. And let's move on to that. I mean, Shannon, your thoughts on how Tula was handled in this particular finale and her storyline, because it's clear from going back and forth in time here that she hid her son from Valya, who we find out, of course, is Desmond. And then later on, and then she's unsettled by what happens at the beginning to the doctor there, Kavina, I think her name is, and what she experiences and discovers what this thing is, which is connected to the thinking machines, this virus that's going in there. And she goes there to try to save her son from Valya, uses the voice with Valya, but then still helps Valya out of this fear-laced scarecrow type thing, to borrow a thing from Batman, that might have incapacitated Valya, and then has this reunion with Desmond, who initially rejects her, but then they do share these moments of somewhat mother and son, maybe letting down the guards a little bit before he has her arrested. So what did you think of her journey throughout this finale and where we end up by the end with her as a character?
Again, Olivia Williams and the younger actress who played the younger version of Tula, I thought, again, they just did. The younger actress probably had a little less to play than Olivia Williams, but was still really, really compelling.
Emma Canning. Yeah, who I thought was great.
Canning.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought they both did a really fantastic job. And again, we weren't sure where Tula was going to end up. Again, for a moment, having not read the books, I was kind of like, oh, is this the she take out Valya right now? Because ultimately she gave up her son once to kind of protect him.
Yeah.
Is she willing to kind of make that? We've seen that Tula in the past has had the capacity to kill, even if it's not directly. Like we get the sense that it's more of a poison thing. Yeah. She hasn't looked someone in the eye except for the Atreides guy that she had sex with. Yeah. So maybe I'm incorrect about that. Maybe she 100% would be able to accomplish this. But watching, especially that moment that she used the voice, and you see the change in her face, the way that she hardens, essentially, that you see the things that, at least from my point of view, having not a ton of knowledge about the world, the things that we would maybe normally associate with a Harkonnen. It's like, there it is. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was it was kind of heartbreaking that she does have that glimpse of a moment with Desmond.
Yeah.
And he arrests her because, like you don't get to come out now and be like, son, like, did you know what you sent me to? Like, this has sucked.
Yeah.
So the journey that Olivia Williams got to go on with Tula was really, really good. And again, for the folks that know the books and may not have been as satisfied with the show, I mean, I certainly understand that point of view, having been a fan of certain, works of literature and see the way that it has been put on the screen, maybe not to my satisfaction, but for someone again, a neophyte of the kind of Herbert world, I thought this was handled really, really well.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. And I should say it's Sister Nazir, not Kazir. Sorry about that. Sister Nazir, who dies at the beginning there. Her reaction to that, because she's the one that's like, I'm not sure we should do this, and I'm not sure we do this. So it's an interesting role to play for Olivia Williams, because Tula in some ways is very much headstrong and in other ways is very much afraid. So has that kind of character and personality. So when you see her when she's younger, when you see her when she's older, those attitudes about her life are come to the forefront in certain moments, and you can see that. But she has this dogged personality to get to the truth, to get to the answer. Remember, she's the one that wiped out all the Atreides. Like I've heard, like Keiran says, I've heard the monster who wiped out my clan. It wasn't Valya, right? And I think he thinks it might be Valya when it was actually Tula who did that and wiped them all out. So she is the monster. And later, Olivia Williams says that to Emily Watson with that Valya Tula confrontation near the end, where she says, we're both wolves essentially wanting to get what we want in this world. So in a lot of ways, she has the Valya characteristics, a family of the Harkonnens, but she's got a little bit more of a gentleness in certain moments and a little bit of humanity. And I dare I say that term, humanity, but I also think it's interesting too, because like everyone seems to have to sacrifice something except for Valya. It's just like I felt about Sarsgaard in Andor. Like, it's great to tell everybody else to sacrifice stuff because you have a vision of what you think is right, but you don't ever seem to sacrifice anything that's actually close to you. And when she comes close to sacrificing something that is close to her, she kind of bends the rules, Valya does a little bit. But now we saw that with Tula, with the way she lied to Valya about Desmond. And so her approach to this role, I think, is fascinating. So the story she goes on here, I really appreciate it. And I kind of care for Tula more than Valya, to be honest with you, because at least Tula has shown a bit of, as I said, humanity over Valya. Valya is just very much committed to, this is the way the world works and this is the way the world gets saved because I believe that this is the way to go. Whereas Tula realizes there's much more leeway here in certain moments and that people will die as a result of, and she even calls out Valya in their confrontation and says the carnage, the deception, all this stuff, so there is another confrontation coming between these two that I am looking forward to seeing for sure.
I mean, Tula is definitely the more sympathetic of the two sisters.
Lack of a better term. Yeah.
I mean, everything that we're hearing about, everything, especially in that second or third episode when we do the flashback, everything that we get from Valya, I mean, it's conjecture.
Yeah.
It's that this thing happened. This Atreides killed someone from our family. There was a lie that was told. Like, we don't ever actually find out if that was true. And I think that's kind of the thing with the two families is it makes me think of that last episode of Skeleton Crew. It's just like, if you're always attacking each other, nothing's ever going to get settled unless you sit down and talk. So, I mean, not that Tula kind of falls in line with Valya pretty much, except for where it comes to Desmond. It makes me think of Harrow or Harrow, like the nephew, Harrow Harkonnen. How this is someone that has grown up knowing that he comes from a lesser house, that there is this stigma that's attached to him and his family, and he has this ambition, but he doesn't really have the fortitude to kind of see it through. So. And the moment that he tries to call out the Emperor and that just blows up in his face, not literally with his co-conspirators, it blows up in their face. but watching him with Desmond in the fifth episode, kind of like, hey, yeah, sorry, like immediately comes with his hat in his hand. You just get the sense that the Harkonnens at this point in history are very much on their heels the whole time, which again, I'm really curious how the show will eventually link up to when the Harkonnens are all bald and the black sun and just these, kind of creatures of the night. But across the board, I mean, I think they're both fascinating characters, just in different ways.
Well, let's move on. Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. And we'll see what the Harrow Harkonnen, because he only gets like one scene in this finale, basically teasing what he may be using to elevate his status in the second season, considering he's essentially been spying on people with that thing of his. So we will see where that leads to. What do you think of the Desmond situation here, brother? The storyline with him, like he initially is very much with the Emperor, but when the Emperor starts to say that he wants to bring Francesca back and he wants to send Natalia out on a goodwill tour, he realizes that the Emperor is very much now getting snowed by the Sisterhood again. And so he aligns himself with Natalia against Javicco and eventually comes to a situation here where he confronts or is confronted by Valya, and they have a toe-to-toe, and we find out that he has been controlled by some unknown entity, possibly a sister there, because we don't see a face, but we see glowing black robes there. And the thinking machine, a thinking machine rather, not Enaril, a thinking machine has been used to implant these things inside of him to combat Valya in his eye. So what did you think of the journey for him in this particular episode, and where we end up by the end with that reunion with him and Tula, and then him arresting his own mom?
So, I didn't watch Vikings on the History Channel, and I didn't watch Raised by Wolves, but this role's introduction of Travis Fimmel to potentially a wider audience, if you didn't watch those shows, what a great introduction, because just a really, really compelling character, really, really compelling actor. The further the show goes on, I think we pick up on it pretty quick. Like, he has no loyalty to Javicco. The Emperor, this guy is a means. This guy's a means to an end. Like, as long as their goals sort of line up, he's 100% his guy. But when he gets elevated to that position of Bashar, we find out that the Empress has just as much of a poor accounting of the sisters as Desmond does. Like, you see very, very quickly, like he can change sides real fast. I mean, like, the way that he basically throws the Empress under the bus when Javicco asks him, like, why did you arrest my daughter? Like, this is between you and your wife. Like, how many times have you had that with a friend where someone says, hey, you did a thing, you're like, you talked to so-and-so. I was just doing my job. But Travis Fimmel, he's actually someone I was just talking about recently after, like, the Superman trailer came out, and a friend of mine at Universal, knowing that I'm a big Aquaman fan, he's just like, when do you think Aquaman comes back to the DC universe? I'm like, not for a while. I'm like, I don't think we see the Flash. I don't think we see Aquaman. He's like, who would you want to play it? I'm like, right now, there's a guy on Dune Prophecy that I think would be a really interesting Aquaman. That, like, I mean, basically, you can take his look, maybe get rid of his twitchy eye, but you can take his look from Dune and put that guy in Atlantis like that. And I think
great choice.
I think that would make perfect sense. But again, finding out that, like, he knows that his mother was a sister. Like, I don't think he knew who it was. He just knew, and that's part of his point of view is, my mother threw me away. And so whoever is pulling the strings, again, we saw that silhouette. Was that a sister? I thought it was a guy. Personally.
We don't know.
But again, having not a ton of knowledge of the world, I'm like, I don't know who that is, but that revelation that the two eyes, oh God, how did I do this? Johnny. So for our audience, I
think
I got a new camera.
I think you can still. Can't you use the? There must be something you can hit there to reduce the.
Is there?
Well, why don't you explore that? Why? I don't know if there's. There you go. Oh, it's hand. Look at that. I think you just have to push back maybe a little bit. There you. That's still a good shot.
I don't want to mess with it, man. For those of our audience members that are listening and not watching, I got a new camera recently. And the picture is crystal clear, but there are a variety of hand motions that you can make to make the camera do stuff. And the folks watching just got an extreme close-up of my nose hairs when I inadvertently zoomed in on myself.
Yeah. You just got to turn that off. You just have to click on the icon and it should give you an option to turn that off. I've experienced that. You keep going. Finish your points.
Yeah, I've lost it.
Okay.
Travis Fimmel is great. Can't wait to see where he goes.
I agree. And I like the character a lot. And I like where we're going with this. And I like that they didn't backtrack on this character. He's very clearly driven to destroy the sisterhood. And he will, as you said very well, Shannon, he will align himself with anybody who will help him do that, no matter if he was against them or for them. And the fact that the Empress, who clearly has her own hatred of the sisterhood, as you mentioned as well, Shannon, I like them as a combo. I wish they had kept that. Because remember, they made out in the last episode, right? So she kissed him, rather, and it was pretty extensive kiss. So he was willing to throw her under the bus. So how strong is that alliance? Is it just formed from the destroying this? And now that Tula has come in and it is his mom, how much will that newfound alliance with Natalia be questioned or come into question with his actions, right? So there's stuff to bleed into season 2 that's going to be interesting with this connection. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Travis Filmel's done a great job. And I read an interview with him saying, like, I don't see Desmond as a villain. And I agree. I don't see Desmond as a villain. I see Desmond as a unwilling product of this battle. And he's being used. And so whoever is using him, though, clearly must have known that Tula is his mom and knew that he could go toe-to-toe with Valya and possibly take her out, which he almost does in that when she asks him to show her end. And so the fact that he's there in that part of it, I think is great. And let's deal with that as we're getting close to wrapping up this review. What did you think of the thinking machine virus revelation here throughout this episode, seeing how it destroys and kills what's her I forget, the Nazir, Sister Nazir at the beginning, the doctor there, and then how it almost takes out Valya, but we find out what this is all about, that it was thinking machines. We also had the thinking machine stuff with Lila and Arul, her destroying that. So there is this hatred of thinking machines, but they use it when it's convenient and they realize they can't control it. So what did you think of this decision throughout this episode to make it be about this, and the way that was visually done to show its power that was very close to sand-like in its ability to get inside your body and burn you from the inside out?
I mean, like any mystery, like this has been the mystery of who is this guy? How is he able to do what he does? And then you also, you're connecting it to Arakkis, to the sandworm.
Yeah.
Like any mystery being revealed, it's like, oh, I kind of did want it to be a little bit of magic, but you find out, nope, it's the science. The whole idea of the thinking machines being a part of this world and knowing that that's sort of what preempted everything that we see in this story. I thought was fascinating. And again, not knowing a ton about the world, having that introduction, which I thought was something really strong that they did right at the beginning, was explaining the world just enough. So we're kind of like, okay, so this is what came before. This is why they have these, not prejudices, but this is why they are very much against this, because of the things that can go wrong. Like they almost lost their world the first time. We're not going to open that door again.
Right. So
knowing that is the thing, like the thing that he was rallying against, like that's why he killed that kid, the way he killed it was by using the same thing that he actually was killing someone for. So I thought that was a really, again, we always love the magic, but knowing that, like, oh no, the sort of the hypocrisy of his stance, And how much of this is his stance and how much of this is whoever is behind the curtain? Like that's the fun mystery that's going to take us forward. And knowing that we're going to get answers to that in some capacity with the season 2 is a big relief, because had this show not gotten a season 2, like this isn't one that I've heard a ton of people talking about. If it had not gotten a season 2, it would have been like, man, what a bummer. Right. or would this have been a situation where they kind of cut around some of that stuff because it's like, well, we don't want to leave any hanging threads. But the whole thinking machine angle, knowing that it's what started it and it is potentially what is going to end it. Yeah. Great.
Yeah. I like the thinking machine stuff. I want to see who's wielding it. And I think I think it just matters, right? Because a lot of people know that it's like tools are important, but it all depends on who's wielding them to see what the tool can do, right? And so I like that element of it. Who is operating this thinking machine? Who is using it? Because I mean, Valya clearly used the Anna Rule thinking machine for her own benefit when it suited her. So she's the last one to be calling anyone out for using a thinking machine to enact their own ideas or their own views of the world onto the world here. And where is it going to lead us to, and who's wielding it? But the visuals of it, the brutality of it, and the way they yanked his eye socket out and then turned his eye around. I mean, oh my God, that was body horror in such a quick way that was unsettling as hell. But you see that this is still inside of him. I thought they were going to like singe it out, or there was going to be something that Tula did that maybe destroyed it within him. But no, it's still within him. It's connected to the sandworm. It's connected to those things that pop in and out there on the sandworm, on the sand there in Arrakis. So I'm very, very curious to see what's going to be revealed about that and who wields it. Let's wrap up with this. By the end, it is Valya and Ynez and Keiran now on Arrakis. So Shannon, what do you anticipate we're going to see as this the episode wrapped up here? Where is she going to establish a base out of here? Is this where the Atreides really start to locate themselves? Because wasn't Arrakis given to them by the Harkonnens at the beginning of Dune? So what is the experience going to be like? Because remember, we're still 10,000 years before the Dune movie. So what do you anticipate we're going to get here with an Arrakis? Oh, sorry, with an Atreides and a Harkonnen in an uneasy alliance here on Arrakis.
Well, if my memory serves, it's the Emperor who gives it to the Atreides at the beginning of Dune, because the Harkonnens, the claim was they weren't doing enough to basically combat the Freemen, I think, right. But it was all a ruse to basically get rid of the Atreides. So there's so much political stuff in Dune that is like right over my head.
Well, it was influenced by the Harkonnens wanting to get rid of the Atreides. True, very true. Yes.
So yeah, I have no idea. I mean, again, this is one of the joys of having almost zero knowledge of the source material. This is a brand new journey for me. But I did think it was interesting that you have a show, and I guess it's that the title of the book is different, but you have a show called Dune Prophecy, and nothing ever actually takes place on the planet that makes Dune so famous.
Oh yeah,
other than like some some brief flashbacks and sequences with the sisters that we find out that was not the sandworm. That was the thinking machine pulling Desmond's eye out. Yeah. So knowing that the planet, which is such a significant part of the property, the planet is going to play a present kind of a present part in the story. I think I'm excited to see where that goes, and also knowing how Ynez saying that Keiran had to come with them, otherwise she wasn't going to go with Valya. Knowing that this was not something Valya wanted, this is something that she had to do. So you have this trio set up of very interesting dynamic between the three of them, and to see like what their course of action is going forward. I mean, again, who's on the throne right now? I mean,
seems like Natalia is for now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So for now, I mean, because Javicco essentially undercut their plans with that beautiful scene with Francesca, which, and Natalia killed Francesca, so in essence, she's moved her way into this position of power, and her running out, kind of like Lady Macbeth screaming, the Emperor's been killed, the Emperor's been killed. She's essentially set up Francesca and the sisterhood to look like they are the villains who killed the emperor. So how much is that going to affect the balance of power there with all the other nations that are using, or other planets that are using the sisterhood to advise them in what they're doing? So there's all kinds of conflicts being set up here. And clearly, Valya thinks this, or that Arakkis is a safe place for them to launch this attack, quote, towards their enemy. So it's going to be fascinating to see what they build up there on Arrakis. And even more so, what you said, I think is important too, is like, how much is Ynez going to go along with her, and how much is she not going to along with her? And how much is Keiran going to watch that voice of Valya's and how she manipulates people, as she did throughout this whole episode, to save herself? That's an interesting thing that they've got to find a way to undercut, because that essentially lets her do whatever she wants to do. Desmond is the only one who was able to short circuit her. So how much of that is driving this? I think it's going to be curious to see as well. Any final thoughts on this season as we wrap up our spoiler review here of episode 6, but of season 1 overall?
No, I'm just looking forward to season 2, and this is not something that I was anticipating enjoying as much as I did.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I mean, I was looking forward to this. I think the first episode was probably the most kind of stumbly episode, and then it seemed to really find its footing, especially that Sisterhood Above All episode, which is probably my favorite episode of the season. But this finale did a nice job. I liked that it was an hour and 15 minutes of wrapping stuff up. Yes, did some stuff feel convenient or a little bit rushed? I would agree with that, but you have to give it a little bit of grace because of the strike and all of that. And hopefully that second season, now that they've got a little more time to really dig into these characters and dig into these relationships and these worlds, hopefully that'll be a much more satisfying season overall here, and launch us into even more of this franchise being fleshed out on screen, both in the theater and there at home on your TV screens. Well, thanks so much for watching this this episode 6 and season 1 spoiler review here of Dune Prophecy on the Outlaw Nation. We appreciate it madly. Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, I'd like to follow us on social media. On Twitter, it's at @geek_buddies. On Instagram, at @the_geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's at Shannon_McClung. On Instagram, it's Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you'd like to follow Mr. Vogel and ask him, hey, how come he never showed up for these? It's at MKToon. If you'd like to follow Mr. Rocha and let him know how much you appreciate us doing this, it's at the Rocha Says.
There you go. And of course, please remember to subscribe to the Outlaw Nation channel. Let us know what you thought about the finale, all the things that went down, all the characters that went down, any moments that we missed that you wanted to make sure we highlighted or spoke about. Let us know what you thought about those down in the comment section below. And for those of you who haven't read the books, where do you think we're going next now in season 2 with the things that have been laid out? And did this season eventually win you back if you were maybe on the fence about it? Did you get over the fence on it and like it? Or are there still some of you who just didn't quite hit the mark for you? Let us know all of it down in the comments section below. Remember, we also have a podcast you can subscribe to. Just type in Geek Buddies in the search window. We will pop up, subscribe to us. Our little animated faces will pop up, and you can subscribe to us and listen to us, even if you don't want to watch our faces here on YouTube, and we appreciate it. So follow us there as well on the Geek Buddies and on Instagram and Twitter, and eventually we'll be on Blue Sky as well. Follow us on all the social media platforms. And thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Oh, and if you don't watch the rest of our content for the rest of the week, have a great Christmas, have a happy holidays, and we'll talk to you next time with another brand new episode of Geek Bites here from the
Geek Buddies! Hey!